Psalm chapter 14 very plainly tells us the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt, they have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good. The Lord looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and seek God. They are all gone aside, they are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge? Who eat up my people as they eat bread, and call not upon the Lord. I'm here to tell you tonight that the education system of the Commonwealth of Virginia is run by fools. I recently received an email from the Amherst County Board of Supervisors about a meeting on June the 1st. And they're going to call some of the school board in to answer for what they're getting ready to do to our children this coming fall. I've looked at some of the curriculum, some teachers have showed it to me, and then they also had a downloadable page about what they're going to be teaching the children, and they're called equity lessons. Equity lessons. And the Board of Supervisors has a list of questions to ask the school board, and then I'm going to tell you what it is they're planning on teaching. And it's not only in Amherst County, it's in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. One question to ask that they wrote is, why is wealth equality being taught? If it is one element of a political ideology, why does it receive a special all-must-attend class instead of being one of many philosophies taught in a political science or civics class? In other words, it's going to be mandatory that children are going to have to listen to this. The next question that I thought I would never hear is, why is race being taught as a determining factor of what is right or wrong? Are children being taught to see themselves as all equal Americans, or as part of an identity group entitled to special treatment or special distrust? And then another question, and I only got 3 of them, is why is truth being taught as subjective and unknowable? And I'm going to explain why they asked that in just a moment. The equity lesson that's going to be taught in the public schools this fall has a group of questions for each child to read and ask themselves, and then at the end of the lesson, they answer it. And the questions is, can different perspectives of the same event be true simultaneously? Is the truth defined by facts alone? Last time I checked, it was. Does perception shape the truth? Can truth ever be fully known? Lord have mercy. And then it tells the teachers that you are to explain to students that you will be discussing a sensitive topic in the area of social justice. Anytime you hear the media or the education system mention social justice, a million red flags need to start flying up in front of your face. And it says that define social justice as the equal or fair treatment of all groups of people in terms of this: distribution of wealth. That was an Obama term for communism. It means that no matter what you earn, it's going to be divvied up equally to everyone, like all of the failed communist nations attempted to do. And so it's going to be in distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society. They're also going to be teaching the critical race theory this year. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a lot of reading that you have to do. And the students have to make statements, not that I know or it's a fact, but only that I think, I feel, or I believe. and not to attack or respond to another one's thoughts. And if they were to say anything that sounds like hate speech, they're to be ejected from the classroom and sent to the office right away. And hate speech is pretty much the reading of the Word of God. Now, what in the world is communism? Maybe you're not familiar with it, you've heard the term, but you're going to need to know what it is because your children are going to be listening to it every day. It is a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war. We have seen that in the last 12 years in this country. They've pitted one group against another, class war, and it's leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. Before the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, socialism and communism were one and the same and were the same terms, and they both meant the same. Both referred to economic systems in which the government owns the means of production. Karl Marx, who published his manifesto in 1848, is considered the father of communism. He was a German philosopher who never worked a day in his life, and his family starved to death. Of course, they won't tell that in the classroom, but it's a fact. And his theories have been known as Marxism. And here was 10 important aspects of what he wanted to teach to the world and force upon the world, and now we're seeing it being brought into the United States. First of all, the elimination of private property. Second, a central single bank. A high income tax that would rise more as you made more. How many times have you heard that out of Biden's mouth? How many times have you heard that out of the rest of the liberals' mouth? The more you make, you're going to pay more and more taxes. All property rights would be confiscated. No inheritance rights. The government, here we go, would own and control all communication and transportation. Do not think for one moment that that little gas shortage that we had last week was an accident. It was a test run just to see how much they could panic everybody and control everyone. And of course, they've already got communication sewed up pretty good. The government would own and control all education, and they do that now. They are trying to squeeze out private schools. They're trying to squeeze out homeschoolers and everything to where only the government would have the right to teach your children. The government would own and control factories and agriculture. Farming and regional planning would be run by the government, and the government would tightly control labor. Those were 10 main tenets of Marxism, and there was, of course, a whole lot more. But here's the thing that is really, really sobering that you need to listen to. There was a congressman by the name of the Honorable A.S. Herlong, Jr. of Florida. And he was speaking in the House of Representatives, and he was quoting from a lady who was an articulate and ardent opponent of communism, and published an article in the DeLand, Florida Courier, in which she dedicated to the purpose of alerting the public to the dangers of communism in America. And she got it, she labeled it called Current Communist Goals. This is what they wanted to do at the time this was published. And she got it from a book called The Naked Communist by Cleon Skousen. This was in 1963 when she published this, of what the current goals of the Communist Party of America. By the way, if you go to the Communist Party website, Communist Party of America website, and the Democratic Party of America website, it's the exact same information on both of what they plan to do. They call themselves progressives, and they're moving forward, and they're doing this and doing that. It's like they did a cut and paste from the other party's website. And so all the way back in 1963, here were the goals of the Communist Party. Number one, U.S. acceptance of coexistence as the only alternative to atomic war, and that the United States was to give in to whatever was forcing against them to keep from engaging in atomic war. To develop the illusion that the total disarmament by the United States would be a demonstration of moral strength. By giving up your weapons and your military, you would be showing moral strength, while the immoral communists walked in backwards and trampled right over top of you. But there are people today that are stupid enough to believe this as being the high ground. Then another goal was to permit free trade between all nations regardless of communist affiliation and regardless of whether or not items could be used for war. Now, I'm going to get to the point where it affects you and your children in just a few minutes, but you need to hear these. They are to provide American aid to all nations regardless of the communist denomination or domination, and to grant recognition of Red China and admission of Red China to the UN. That's been done. Most of the stuff that I have read has already been done, but you haven't heard the worst of it yet. One of the main goals was to promote the United Nations as the only hope for mankind. They're looking at that now. And if its charter is to be rewritten, demand that it be set up as a one world government with its own independent armed forces. And some communist leaders believe the world can be taken over as easily by the UN as by Moscow, and sometimes these two centers compete with each other as they are now doing in the Congo. They have done that. They already have United Nations forces with those little blue helmets on, which quite frankly I think make fabulous targets. Did I say that out loud? And they are attempting to form a one world government out of the United Nations and to rule from there. They have a world court, they've got this and they've got that, and they're trying to get the whole world to capitulate to them, which most every nation has. And there's some struggle with the U.S. getting involved in it. Another goal, number 12, to resist any attempt to outlaw the Communist Party. We attempted to do that many decades ago, and the man was ridiculed, McCarthy, and Lord knows we need him back here again. All right, to do away with all loyalty oaths and continue giving Russia access to the United States Patent Office. And here's my favorite. It's already been fulfilled. To capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. Well done. They've got them now. They've got one and they're taking over another one. And it's not going to be long before they're going to come in without firing a shot unless people make a stand. Now, here's another one. Number 17. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. They've got the colleges. They've had the colleges since the 60s. Most students that graduate from liberal arts colleges are bona fide followers of communism by the time they get out. The professors were a lot of those that did the rioting, and they were part of the Student Democratic Society and a bunch of other communist agencies, and now they are in the colleges teaching the young people, and usually when they get out, they have already turned that way. And it says to soften the curriculum and get control of the teachers' unions. Done and done. And put the party line in school textbooks. Again, they have already done that decades ago in the colleges. Now they're doing it in the grade schools and the high schools, and they are rewriting the books. Matter of fact, one of the textbooks that came out a few years ago stated that the members of the Boston Tea Party were terrorists. They did. And so now students coming up through our school systems view the foundations of this nation as evil and something to be done away with. Oh, you haven't heard the rest of it yet. Another one is to gain control of all student newspapers, which they've done. And here's one that we saw pop up in the last few years. Use student riots to foment public protests against programs or organizations which are under communist attack. In other words, these students that are rioting today, not necessarily students, but the BLM and the Antifa and all of that stuff, we watched a lot of it this last summer and watched what they did. And what they were doing was protecting communist ideology at all costs. They would burn a city to the ground. As a matter of fact, there's not much left of Portland, Oregon right now. They want a communist city. They want it. They got one. I don't know what they're complaining about. Look at who runs the thing. But they've done it to, you take a ride through downtown Richmond, Virginia, and you see half of the businesses boarded up. And all over the country, businesses were burned to the ground, never to return again over this because of these people who hold a pro-communist stance. Here's one of my very favorites. Infiltrate the Press. Geez, a good thing they haven't done that yet. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions. My goodness. And here's another good one. All you got to do is watch CNN, ABC News, pretty much all of the mainstream news organizations. Here's goal number 21. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Now, this was written in 1963, so they have Facebook now and Twitter, which are actually larger than all of the other media groups put together. They banned the very president of the United States from Facebook and Twitter from making patriotic statements. They had him removed because he was making pro-American statements. Tell me that is not pure communism. Of course it is. Matter of fact, they said they have banned him for life. And it's run by these little weenies that are communist. And they're very rich communists. And they will censor anything. I was banned from broadcasting our Facebook page. I had to get somebody else to go on and do it for 90 days because the things that I say from the pulpit do not meet their community standards. I'm sure it don't. They got one heck of a community of filthy, low-down, dog communists. That's what you are. Now, you can ban me now if you want to. I had to get up in the face of Facebook tonight. I'm sorry. All right. Gets me mad. Here we go. Here's one you saw a lot of in the last 2 years. Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was told to eliminate all sculpture from parks and buildings. Substitute shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. We've seen that. They have taken and removed even the statue of Stonewall Jackson from the school that he worked at. They've taken away Robert E. Lee. They've taken Thomas Jefferson, trying to take Thomas Jefferson from UVA, the school that he founded. And on and on and on. They want to destroy history, and communists have always destroyed history, so the generation coming up would have no knowledge of where they came from, and therefore would have no way of knowing where they were going and how to get there. Then here's another one we've seen a lot of. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling that censorship. In other words, all the smut and the filth that teenagers are looking at on their phones all day long now cannot be banned, cannot be removed, because it would be called censorship. But you can remove the president and take him off for making pro-American statements. Tell me that's not communism, and I'll sit down now and shut up. Any takers, anybody? Okay, I didn't think so. And it says it's calling it censorship, and it's a violation of free speech and free press. I remember when that stuff was banned, and now you can't ban it and people wanted it banned because it was filthy. I remember the first time back in the 70s, the Amherst Drive-In tried to show an X-rated movie. And I loved that man, Sheriff Malin Bryant. I loved him. He was a good man. He showed up, watched about 5 minutes of it, and went up there and turned it off and said, "You are not going to show this filth in my county." And that was the end of X-rated movies in Amherst County. And he wasn't violating free speech. He was looking out for the well-being of the community, was what he was doing. The next thing they want to do is to break down, and this is in 1963, people. It hadn't happened yet, okay? It was nowhere near happening. I remember 1963. To break down the cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV, which have been superseded with the internet. Again, every single young person that has a cell phone has been exposed to XXX hardcore pornography. They may not tell you, but I know that it is a fact, and it will eventually destroy them, all in the sake of free speech and lack of censorship. The next thing is number 26, to present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and even healthy. And we have seen that done. They have come up with a disease now for us that oppose sexual perversion. We're phobes. We have all kinds of mental problems because we object to these things that the Communist Party has helped put upon us. And people are falling for it, right and left. Here's another one. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion. Discredit the Bible and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity, which does not need a religious crutch. We have pastors in the churches today that were educated in a lot of these cemeteries. Not seminaries, they're cemeteries. And their churches are dead. They live in fear. They have no faith. Look around and see all the churches that are closed after a year and a half as a result of COVID. A year and a half. Oh my Lord, they need to go on and leave it closed and go get a job. If you can't trust Jesus with your body, and you claim you trust him with your soul, you are a liar. You're a liar. And this is just absolutely ridiculous. And more churches are concerned more with preaching social justice and social religion rather than the Word of God. And they're turning out people that are on their way to hell thinking that they had a great day at church. Here's another one. And this was done not long after this was written, by Madeline Murray O'Hare. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates, and you've heard this, the principle of separation of church and state. Separation of church and state. You may not know this, but they claim that the separation of church and state is in the United States Constitution. Go get a copy of it and show me where that's in there. You will not find it in there. What it was Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to the Baptist Church in Danbury, Connecticut, where they were afraid that the Constitution was going to favor one religious denomination over another. And believe it or not, Baptists were not very popular at the time. The Anglican and Episcopal Church was, which was originally the Church of England. And so he said there would be a wall of separation put up where no church would be favored or anything like that. But he said nothing about separation of church and state. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson, whatever people have accused him of, went to church almost every Sunday where it was held in the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So that's obvious that he did not mean that. But the average Joe on the street will be the first one to jump up and holler, separation of church and state, it's in the Constitution. You can't do this, you can't do that. Okie dokie. Since there is such a separation, what in the devil is the governor doing shutting churches down? If there is separation of church and state, where does he think he gets the authority? Because he knows there is no such thing in the Constitution, and he doesn't care one way or the other. So you got to think, people. You got to read and you got to think, and quit listening to the news and quit listening to the media and quit listening to in the classrooms, because they'll lie to you. Now here's another one. We've seen it already done. Number 29. Discredit the American Constitution. Ruth Bader Ginsburg did it. Joe Biden just recently did it. And a number of other people have done it. Discredit it by calling it, number one, inadequate, number two, old-fashioned, and then number three, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. One of the reasons that Donald Trump was hated so strongly was he wanted to return to the Constitution and not globalism. He wanted to go back to American first. And a lot of the globalists hated him for that, and that's for the reason for the smear campaign. The next one, and I've seen a lot of this, and what you hear when you see people get on Facebook and post or social media or TV or whatever, they will discredit the founding fathers. And that was one of the communist goals. And number 30, discredit the American founding fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. And that's been going on for several decades now as well. They try to make them look like the lowest, low-down, sorry, whatever's, and I've heard, and that's called revisionist history. You'll see a lot of that. Another one is belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the ground that it was only a minor part of the big picture, give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. Then it says to support any socialist movement, to give centralized control over any part of culture, education, social agencies, welfare programs, and mental health clinics. Number 38. And this is actually being done in some of the cities where they're getting rid of the police departments and they're bringing in social workers. Now, that is actually highly entertaining because, first of all, the most dangerous thing that a policeman can walk up on is a domestic fight between a man and a woman. More police officers have been injured or killed where they go in the house and start snatching up the man because he's beating on the wife and everybody has a change of heart, and the wife buries a meat cleaver in the back of the cop's head. That happens. Well, now in the cities like Minneapolis and all the other ones where they're trying to defund the police and get rid of police departments, they want to send unarmed social workers on the scene to take care of that. Give that about a year, and after they've all been hospitalized or killed, then they'll be wanting the police back, But that is one of the most ignorant things. But listen, that was a communist goal. These people are not just making this stuff up as they go along. This has been planned for decades. Number 38, transfer some of the powers of arrest from the police to social agencies. Sound familiar to you? Treat all behavioral problems as psychiatric disorders, which no one but psychiatrists can understand or treat. I happen to have had about 6 years of psychology training. I did the criminology, the sociology, I did abnormal psychology, my favorite, and I got to study all of that. And what they have attempted to do over the decades is to make no one responsible for their behavior. Now, I do realize there are psychological disorders that are organic, and you genuinely have to have medication to help with that and all that, and it's nothing shameful, nothing wrong with that. But basically, what they do with some people is start off when they are young and telling them they're not responsible for their behavior. Let me give you an example. There was a lady that went to the church here about 20 years ago, and she had 2 kids. One of them was 6 years old and the other one was like 9 years old. She started the 5-year-old on psychiatric counseling and medicine at the age of 5 when he was a perfectly normal child. She allowed me to take him to a children's camp for a week one time, and I did it without her being with him. She had a bag of medicine like that. When I got there, I told the camp counselor, don't give him none of this medicine. Let him have some fun this week. When we came back to pick him up, there he comes across the field, mud from head to toe, fishing pole in his hand. He had a perfectly normal week. Eventually, though, she got so wild that the state took the kids from her because of what she kept doing that to them. She brought him to me one time, and she said, he is out of control. She said we were going down the highway, and he took a aluminum frying pan in the back seat and busted me over the head with it, and I almost wrecked the car. And I looked at him like my dad would, and I go, what's wrong with you, boy? And he said, I'm acting out. And he knew all the terms, those long terms. And I said, okay, y'all come down in the kitchen with me. And we had a 4-burner electric stove. And I turned one of the burners on and let it get red. And I said, all right, son, go over there and put your hand on that burner. And he looked at me, he said, I will not. I said, why? He said, because it'll burn me. And so I looked at Mom, I said, take him home and tear his tail up. Case closed. Ain't nothing wrong with him. And it wasn't nothing wrong with him. But Mama had made something wrong with him. And that is part of the change of behavior that the Communist Party wants to get, is through psychiatry and psychology, where they go out not after people who genuinely need it, but they want to change the behavior of America to where nobody is accountable for anything. And they said to dominate, number 39, the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. That's why they call me a homophobe. That's why you're called an Islamophobe. That's why you're called a phobe this and a phobe that, because you oppose the things that are going to destroy the country from the inside. And here it is fulfilled right here, number 39. And number 40, to discredit the family as an institution and to encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. Back many years ago, there was no such thing in America as an easy divorce. If you wanted a divorce, buddy, you had to jump through some huge hoops to do that. And you had better have really solid grounds to get a divorce, and I don't like her or I don't like him was not grounds for divorce. And as a matter of fact, there was, my mother used to work right next to the courtroom, and she walked and stood outside the courtroom one time, and there was a man and a woman who had been living together for a number of years and had a couple of children. And the judge found out about it, and he called them in there, and he said, either y'all get married right now or you're both going to jail. Now, that's pretty wild, isn't it? You'll never see that ever again in America. But they got married in a hurry. And But see, the family unit was the strongest element in America's foundation. It was so important. And now we've got so many people that from broken homes and children from broken homes, and we keep repeating the cycle over and over and over again. And I realize that sometimes it is unavoidable. Please don't misunderstand me. I do know that. But they've made it too easy, where if we don't like somebody or if they just don't suit us, we'll get a divorce. I'm glad that I'm married to a woman that is loyal. She should have probably killed me about 33 years ago, something like that, in my sleep. But she was very merciful, and she's hung on with me for 36 years. But that's the only way to make a marriage solid and to make the country solid, is to be determined to try to work it out and do the best you can no matter what. Don't make things an option. Don't make an escape route an option. But please understand, the easy divorce and the rampant promiscuity was encouraged and introduced literally by the Communist Party, because they know for a fact if they can break up a family and break up a home, they got the whole ball game. You don't even have to worry about the church if you can destroy the family, because the families are what makes up the church and what makes the church strong. And if you can destroy the family, you can get the church. They know that. They're not stupid. And they've been planning this for a long, long time. And what we need to do is to pray hard on what to do, how to handle this. What's an alternative to this? Can we get parents together and co-op and educate our children? What can we do? And I want you to know that I stand with you. I'm praying for you, and I'll do anything I can to help you facilitate these things, because we have got to take America back. We've got to take it back now. We can't wait for the next generation, because after they get done this fall, there won't be a generation to salvage. There really won't. And so we need to pray real hard about what the Lord would have us to do to fight this, because at one time Khrushchev, a famous communist leader, made the statement, "We will take you over without firing a shot." And they've done it. They have done it. And we need to take it back away from them before everything that we believe in is outlawed. They're rapidly doing it in Washington, D.C. right now, as fast as they possibly can. And so we need to do what we can to combat it. Candy, are you occupied with your young'un? She's what? No, I'm not. Okay, well then, if you